Morning, Mikhail, and morning, Synthesia. Let's go, Chief. Absolutely. Morning, everyone. Good morning. So yeah, there's some big news. This is fantastic news, actually. So let's just wait for a couple more people to join. And I'm going to, welcome from Croatia. Yeah, very good. It's been a few days. I've had some people even asking, when are you going live again? I said yesterday, I'll go live when there's something to say. Well, today there's something to say. So probably about less than an hour ago, it seems that a lot of people in Algiers that were expecting interviews in Algiers embassy have been mailed their 2NLs, emailed their 2NLs. Now, I was a little cautious and suspicious at first because the first screenshot I saw of the email just didn't look right. It looked weird. It didn't look like the normal 2NL. So, but since then, I've seen other features of real 2NLs. So I'm convinced now that this is really happening. So basically, a 2NL. 2NL, just what is a 2NL? 2NL stands for Second Notification Letter. It's the interview scheduling. And so, of course, in DV2021, up until today, we haven't seen any of those. The normal process is that KCC send out an email to your inbox saying you've got updates available at the ESC page. This is the same page where you checked and originally found you were a winner. So you go into your 2NL, into your ESC page where you saw the letter that said, congratulations, you've been selected. And that letter is replaced. And this is an important point for some people, by the way. If you want to see that letter, you want to grab that letter and download it now. But that original 1NL, the selected letter, is replaced by your appointment letter. So the email you get has no details. And what I saw this morning looked like an email, and that was bizarre, very odd. Didn't look correct, and I was slightly suspicious of it. But I've since seen an email that is, or a screenshot of an email that is more correct. I've also seen the email from KCC that says you've got updates on the ESC page. And I've seen someone has taken a screenshot of their CX status, which shows in transit. And that's a special status, which we only see for a few hours typically. It's when KCC press the button to say they're sending the file electronically. It's instantly. They don't mail it by post or anything by FedEx. It's instant. But they press the button to say, okay, this file is going to the embassy, in this case, Algiers. And the CX status for a brief period of time shows in transit, meaning in transit from KCC to the embassy. And then the embassy accept it. And when they accept the case, when they mark the case as having been accepted, again, it's electronically, then the case turns to a ready status, right? Well, we don't normally see that in transit for more than a few hours, perhaps a day, a couple of days at most, right? Depending on how quickly the embassy are to accept that. So it's rare to see that. And I don't think many people, if people were trying to fake this, if this was some sort of big pretense, they wouldn't know to make the case in transit. You have to know the process quite deeply to understand that that's going to happen at this precise point. So although I've now explained it to everyone, so everyone now knows. Anyway, so that's so I'm convinced this is happening. So what's happened behind the scenes is Algiers, I think, and this is just my assumption, Algiers embassy have said, look, we're ready to go. And you had interviews, that you had people that were ready for interview in October and November and December and so on. We're ready. So they've probably contacted KCC and said, we're ready to interview some people. If you've got some cases, send them to us. We'll interview them. And they've set them up in March, a week from now. That's very unusual. Normally, you could consider these as being not March 2NLs, but almost like late February 2NLs. We're the 4th of March. right? So I consider these to be almost like late February emails, because normally 2NLs sent out in March would be for May interviews, and these and they would go out after the visa bulletin. These are going out, because of the ban being removed, etc., and because Algiers are saying we're ready. So these are going out really. I consider them, let's say, late February. I said last week that we might see a few emails this in the first few days of March. But I wasn't that hopeful of it, and I didn't make a big deal of it. What's surprising to me, though, is that they're scheduling them so quickly. They're doing them, they've actually set the interviews up for the 11th of March, only 1 week away from now. Well, that's very little time. Normally, you would send out the February 2NLs would be for April interviews. There's normally a full 6 or 7 weeks between the 2NL that you receive and the interview, because in that time you need time to gather your documents together, all of your education stuff that you hadn't sent to KCC, any other documents you need, your I-134 or whatever financial documents you need, all of that documentation has to be gathered. And you have to have a medical appointment, or you're supposed to have a medical appointment. In reality, you can actually attend your interview in a lot of embassies without the medical having been performed. They'll forgive that, and you'll be on administrative processing until you provide that medical. So you can't be approved without the medical. And between now and the 11th, some number of people in Algiers are going to be rushing to see the same doctor. So if you have received one of these emails, I would get on the phone immediately to the panel physician, the physician that is approved and recommended by the embassy. You should know who that is. You should contact that physician and try and make an appointment over the next few days. I don't know how many interviews they've set up, but there is going to be a demand for whatever time slots that physician has. I would not be at all surprised if that physician is expecting the flood of appointments, because this is what I've talked about in the past as being the whole system needs to be ready, not just the embassy. The physicians for the embassy need to be ready. KCC need to have done their processing. Whatever background checks have been performed or needed to have been performed would have been done. The whole system, it's more than just one embassy. The whole system needs to be ready for this process to work. So I just glanced at a comment there. It says, "What happened to my website? Can't access it anymore in Dubai." That's weird. I should imagine just refresh your. I'm just going to check that. Just refresh your. Yeah, it's coming up fine for me here in America. So it's either an issue in Dubai or it's an issue with your connection or something. Anyway, so this is good news. Why is this good news? Well, the point is, KCC clearly have done something outside the norm, right? They've done something very unusual here. They've set up appointments with some cooperation from one particular embassy, and perhaps we'll hear about more embassies over the next few hours or few days that are doing similar things. But they've done something very unusual. They haven't applied their normal sort of way of doing things. They haven't, they've clearly understood that there is a problem here. They clearly didn't just sit on their hands and say, well, the normal process is, we'll send out 2NLs after the VB in March and they'll be for May interviews. They haven't done that. That's what I thought they would do, frankly. I was hoping that they might get some interviews set up for April, but I absolutely didn't suspect that they would set up any in March. Okay, so this is really unusual. KCC is not an organization that does unusual things like this normally, unless instructed by a judge, and no judge has instructed them to do anything. This is not just for plaintiffs, by the way, named plaintiffs on some of the cases. This is not just for that, because there are no named plaintiffs where a judge has said you must treat that plaintiff for DV2021. You must treat that plaintiff with urgency. So there is nobody that's being prioritized other than they're at Algiers embassy. So that's really impressive. Thank you, KCC, for doing that. I appreciate that you're trying, KCC, Philip. Thank you. I think it's tremendous that they're trying to do something, and that they're prepared to break some of their normal rules and norms in order to do things. What will we see over the next few days? Well, this encourages me that we're going to see similar sort of activity from embassies that are working. Now, clearly, it's going to be slightly unfair for people waiting in countries where the embassy is not working in that way. But let's look at the positive side. If they can clear through some numbers, some people through the system, it's a positive thing for everybody. Because if they can use capacity in March and in April, and by the time we get to May, etc., we're going to have the possibility of more general capacity. And again, this is about KCC's time as well as all the other things, the background checking agencies and all that sort of thing. The fact that they're doing that now is a good thing for everybody. Trust me on that. It is a good thing. So, and it shows that they're trying to do everything they can. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. We haven't waited very long for this. This is, frankly, I mean, I know many of you couldn't understand why interviews didn't just start happening the next day, but this is the closest thing we can get to it. This is amazing, right? So I'm very excited about this. Okay. I'm hoping that's clear. Technically, is it possible to arrange a medical? Yep, it's a good question. It may be possible. There's an organization called IOM in some countries. I hate them. They think they're in charge of the bloody world. And if you work for IOM and you behave the way that I've seen IOM behave in terms of telling people what they can and can't do, you suck. You suck big time. You're supposed to be an organization helping immigrants, not holding them back. But in countries where IOM haven't got control of the medical process, etc., it'll be down to who's smart enough to get on the phone immediately to the physician and book an appointment. That's going to be important. Just like all along, you need to be on your, you need to be ready and you need to fight for your own case. And if you don't do that, for people that go to Algiers on the 11th, if they haven't had the medical, it doesn't mean that they're going to be refused. What it means is they'll be placed on administrative processing, AP, pending receipt of the medical. So if they then got the medical, a couple of days later, a week later or something, that would be fine. So we could see some visas issued in DV 2021 in March, and that is fantastic. I'm over the moon about that. So let me see if I can just sort of scroll back up and I'll try and pick out a few of these questions. Yes, Bundix, that's exactly right. First 2 NLs for people who got interviews in Algiers. That's what's got me excited this morning, Bundix. Costa Rica, I want to go there actually. How many computers do you have? I answered this last video. I've got 4 computers. So yeah, and 1 upstairs. Hello, joining from Liberia. Everything normal? No. Waiting for good news. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down here. Is there any possibility all the visas will be adjudicated to the not banned countries before banned countries have a chance? No, there isn't a possibility of that. Obviously, Algiers, is going to have some advantage. People in Algiers are going to have some advantage because they're earlier, but it's not like you can't give 50,000 visas to everybody in Algiers, and that's not how it works. There is a country cap, country limit. No single country can get more than 7% of the global population or the global amount of visas. So no, that's not a problem, Maria. Don't worry about that. And this is just about using extra time. There's no need to look at the negative side of this. From Morocco, what's the conditions apply for DV lottery? I don't know what you mean, the condition to apply. So firstly, the lottery entry has to be open, and it's only open in October. Secondly, you have to be educated to a certain level, basically the same level as university entry, and pretty much that's about it. You can get away with, if you're not educated to that level, you can get away with certain types of work experience, but it's got to be at a certain level. But for a question as basic as this, all I would say is just follow just wait till October, enter the lottery and see if you win. Okay, it's not a plan, it's a lottery. DV2020, okay, so Everest, Nepal. For people for DV2020, you have to wait until the Gomez case is finalized. There's no way that we're going to suddenly see activity like this for DV2020. In the normal way of working, DV2020 would be done. It would be over. There would be no more chance. And in fact, all of the 7,000 people in the normal way of working, without legal intervention, the 7,000 people that got visas in September would have been screwed, frankly. It's only legal intervention that has saved all of those visas and has given us a chance of the Gomez case winning in probably April now. So you have to wait. You have to wait for the outcome of that case. The lawyers are fighting as hard as they can. So there you go. Oh, Hamza, yes, you were asking when's the next. You asked me twice, I think, at least twice. So I'm glad you got the message that I was doing a live. Hamza, yeah, that's great. It is great news, Hamza. You're absolutely right. You see, I said I would do a live when I had news. I have news, so I did a live. Okay, when will interviews start in Afghanistan? Afghanistan is obviously difficult. You may have to travel to another embassy. I don't know specifically embassy by embassy. I know about Algiers embassy scheduling some interviews now, and I suspect that there's going to be some other embassies doing the same thing. KCC, they would do it for one embassy. I'm not saying they wouldn't do it for one embassy, but since they're doing it for this one embassy, they're probably going to do the same thing for other embassies where the embassies say that they are ready. And a few people have had, have said that sort of thing already. I've seen emails from embassies where they've said, we're ready to start working. We're ready to start doing immigrant visas. As long as those embassies are contacting KCC saying, we're ready, please send us some cases, then we're in good shape. Those of you in DV 2020 will know in September, we had very different reactions from the embassies. Some embassies went out of their way to help people, even from outside of the country. There were particular embassies and particular embassy workers who literally contacted people and said, I can help you. You've asked if you wanted to transfer to our embassy in the past. I can help you. I'm going to ask KCC to send me your case. Can you travel here? We saw heroic actions by some of the embassies. We saw other embassies act like assholes, frankly. Cairo embassy sat there and did bloody nothing. Some other embassies didn't behave responsibly. And Cairo was a particularly annoying one because they have thousands of cases in a typical year. They interview about 2,500 cases a year. They could have done more, frankly, but we saw other embassies that went out of their way. And so this, to me, is a sign that Algiers embassy have gone out of their way to help people locally. And I think that's fantastic. So I appreciate them for that. Holy cow, you had Ash. You had a 7.3 earthquake. This is a weird year, huh? You can't get back to sleep, so live it is. There you go. Well, I'm glad you're awake with me. So I don't know of any other countries like this. I should imagine if I was watching the Twitter feed, I'd probably be hearing about some others or maybe some rumblings, but we'll see. You already asked that question, Maria. DV 2022 will be announced, I think, in May. I actually hope they delay. You're not going to like this, Atta. I hope they delay the announcement of the results for DV 2022. We need a bit of time. I'm a little concerned, and I have spoken to the. I've spoken to. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis, I appreciate that contribution. That's very kind of you, and thank you for your kind words. So sorry, that just sort of surprised me. I don't often see that. I've spoken to the lawyers about this because I see a little bit of a threat of some things happening together. The Gomez case for DV 2020, in that case, 9,000 visas are reserved. That's about 4,500 cases. Remember, each case is the selectee themselves and whatever derivatives there are on that case. So if we only got 9,095 visas, that would mean about 4,500 interviews that need to happen, right? 4,500 interviews is roughly more than a month's worth of interviewing, right? So even if we don't get more than 9,000 visas for DV 2020, even if that's all we got, there would be a month's worth of capacity taken for DV 2020. And the lawyers are asking for more, obviously, right, in DV 2020. What if they get an extra, people say all the time, well, there are 35,000 visas missing in DV 2020. We need those 35,000 or 36,000. That's just incorrect. I'm sorry. The people that are saying those numbers don't understand, the numbers. It isn't 35,000. It's less than that. But never mind too much about that. The point is that if they added, let's say, 20,000, which would be all we would need, right? If they added 20,000 to the, instead of 9,000, made it 20,000, that would frankly be enough, or almost enough. If we got that would be 10,000 visa interviews, and that would strain the system. And with DV 2021 coming online, that's also, that's going to strain the system. And then KCC being diverted to do DV 2022 from May onwards, receiving DS260s and having to spend some of their resources on that, I think that would be unwise, right? So if I was managing that process, I wish I was, I would be deferring the announcement of DV 2022 until June, same as last year. For COVID reasons, I would do the same thing they did last year. But if they don't do that, then DV 2022 will be announced in June. In May. Okay. How long is the medical exam good for that we should take to the interview? I want to know because I have to notice them at work. Okay. It's not so much how long the medical is good for. It's really about how long the medical date plus 6 months will be set, will cause the setting of your visa expiry. So you'll have 6 months after you do the medical. So if you did the medical today, but you interviewed in 3 weeks' time, then the clock for your visa would start from today, not from three weeks' time. You understand? So 6 months after that, that's how much time you've got. DV 2020, we're seeing great things on DV 2020. The cases issued, visa holders have been given enormous breaks over the last couple of weeks, and things are starting to work. There's stories about this airline were nasty to me, they didn't let me board, or this, minor sort of, problems where people are being disadvantaged, perhaps they didn't prepare well or something. But a lot more people than are being disadvantaged, a lot more people are entering successfully. And this is amazing. This is fantastic. Now we have to finish off the Gomez case, and work for those remaining DV 2020 visas not issued yet. But already with 7,000 people that were issued last September that are now entering and becoming green card holders in the USA, I'm already thrilled with that. That's fantastic news. And we're getting exceptions. The president, wrote in his proclamation about DV 2020 we're getting noticed, we're getting action, we're getting legal wins. We can't really ask for more. This is fantastic. So although we are asking for more, we're asking to get all of the visas back in DV 2020 in the Gomez case. But frankly, there's lots of good news for DV 2020. All right. There's not names that are being lotteried. I don't know what that question means. How can we reach KCC? The response only by emails and same automated response. Look, KCC for the last 2 or 3 months have been understaffed. But the fact that they're doing this with Algeria shows me that they're doing something. And frankly, I'm happy. if they're scheduling interviews and not picking up the phone, fine, leave them the hell alone. Let them schedule some interviews, right? You can call them in a week's time. You can call them in a few days or send them an email. We need to get them working on scheduling interviews, right? I'm just happy they're doing that. Let's not overwhelm KCC picking up the phone every 5 minutes with dopey questions. Now, try and use some common sense. Use email if you can. Let them schedule their work, but let's be respectful of their time, right? Because while they're working on scheduling interviews, we have to let them do that. All right. I have a son with an American lady. I've not met him now for 10 years, but we talk on Messenger frequently. How can I apply for a visa? No idea. I have no idea about that. I do DV lottery. I don't know about getting non-immigrant visas. Yes, it is fantastic news, Lisa. You're absolutely right. I know. Are you also in Dubai? I know. So, I don't know what's happening with the website, and I'm going on to the website. It's fine. It says not secure, so I might have to work on my certificate. Maybe it's that. I'll have a look at that in a little while. Do you think the embassies in the Schengen area will start process interviews after 31st of March? It's difficult for me to sort of try and guess what's going to happen. The 31st of March date that you're talking about there has nothing to do with the Schengen ban. The Schengen ban doesn't end on the 31st of March. The 31st of March was the date that PP 10014 was supposed to end. So there isn't anything in relation to that date that is going to cause different behavior in the Schengen area. I think we're going to have a judge tell the embassies in the Schengen area to work to process visas. Of course, right now, you have to understand the Schengen ban still applies to everybody except for the people, the DV 2020 visa holders, right? So if you had an interview, let's say if Paris, for example, were to interview and approve your visa, right? You would not be able to enter the USA during the Schengen ban, okay? And unless you go off to some third country and you spend 14 days there. As of today, that's the situation. Because that's the situation, the embassies are choosing not to issue the visas, and they did the same thing last September. But they were instructed last September, on September 14th, about 10 days after the judge gave us the initial order. The judge stepped in and said, "No, you've got to work on these cases even in the Schengen area." So we can get a judge to instruct the embassies to work that way, to process visas even though they can't be used, or that if you could use them, you'd have to go through this 14-day quarantine period. So unless there's a health concern at the embassy itself because of COVID cases in the area, they should be working, but we might need a judge to instruct them. Okay. The final decision in the Gomez case is probably going to be April. They seem to be delaying that a little bit, so it's probably going to be April now. I think may even be May, but but we'll have to see. So Jemalu, Algeria embassy is issuing some appointments. That's basically what's going on. We're getting 2NLs. We're getting appointments in DV 2021. Do you think it'll be current for DV 2021? I've said many times, the only way that there's 130,000 people were told they were winners in DV 2021. There's 55,000 visas. Normally, about 100,000 people would be notified, 100,000 or less, right? In the years where they've gone massively over 100,000, and I'm particularly thinking of DV 2014, where they selected 140,000 people. In DV 2015, they selected 125,000 people. And in both those years, and then in DV 2018, there were caps at the end of the year. In other words, we didn't see all regions current. And at 130,000 selectees, which is what we've got now, it's too many. It's too many for 55,000. Now, it should be said that there were different conditions. A couple of things are different here. In DV 2014, 2015, and 2018, the quota was only 50,000, not 55,000. So that's 10% extra visas. That's a good thing, right? In DV 2021, the passport condition has been there, and so I think there's going to be a higher number of non-responses or refusals in Africa in particular. I say Africa in particular because I think agencies, are more prevalent in Africa. People are, perhaps, I don't know, how should we say it, cheekier. People think that in Africa, I always get people say, I've done this wrong, what's the solution? They always assume there's a solution. Some things there aren't a solution for. But in Africa, that seems to be new news, right? And so the reality is, if you didn't enter your passport information, KCC are challenging people to provide the passport that they entered the lottery with, or provide proof why they're exempt from that requirement. And of course, if you just decided that you didn't have your passport with you, it wasn't ready or whatever, and you just thought you'd be cheeky, then you're not going to get scheduled, right? So that's going to affect the overall number of people that get interviews in DV 2021. And as I say, I think that'll be particularly pronounced in Africa. So, so we might see higher non-response rates. Non-response meaning where somebody didn't provide all of the information they need to be able to get interviewed, right? Or they just didn't move forward with their case. So we might see some chance, of current, but I mean, really 130,000 selectees is just too many. So we shouldn't see that. And bearing in mind that we don't have a full year of processing. I'm thrilled about this news today, but we don't have a full year of processing. So how are we going to get all those people to get through the system? It's going to be difficult. Books and novels, yeah, stop spanning. I can't help you. Is there a chance to preserve all 55K visas for 2021 or extend it? So we'll have to see. I can't say for sure if there's a chance. So that happened in DV 2020, but we haven't seen the final outcome yet, right? So if we can prove the position by, by what happened in DV 2020 for those preserved visas to then be issued, it will set a precedent for DV 2021 to do the same thing, and we would push for it more then. And the lawyers would have an easier time if DV 2020 had been allowed to go ahead in that way. So we'll have to wait and see, Enkel. If DV 2020 Gomez case, on the other hand, fails, then it will be harder, not impossible, but harder to make the same argument in DV 2021. Judge Mehta has been unsure in previous hearings. He's made it clear that he's unsure that he even has the right to tell the government to issue visas after the end of the fiscal year. So, so there you go. We'll have to wait and see what happens. South Africa is, so South Africa is on level one lockdown. The whole world is talking about the South African variant of the coronavirus, right? So there's going to be problems in South Africa for sure in terms of getting visa interviews. And this news today won't change 10143 to answer your question. Okay. No, Nishan, having a different address, no problem. Just change it at the interview. Don't don't do that. Let me just explain something. Books and novels, audiobooks. If you put the same question 58 times, yeah, you're a spam, right? Stop that. And that's not being rude to tell you to stop spamming. That's just being logical, right? So stop that nonsense. I can't help you. Have a nice day. Yeah, and way more than 4 times. Happy cat. Yeah. Okay, Bundix. Algeria has about 6 case threatees, and more of their case numbers are low. That's why they want you to start as soon as possible. Yes, absolutely. So Algeria, yes, it has a lot of cases. I don't think that, I mean, they can't get 6,000 visas because there's a cap. But they absolutely need all the time possible. So what they're doing is fantastic. Yeah, whatever. Right. Let's see. Marcia, I've applied for the DV lottery in 2020 for 2021. I don't know when I enter the confirmation number, it says invalid number. You've got to put the right number in. You're saying you applied in 2020. I think you're talking about 2022. If you applied last October, then you're waiting for the results to come out in May and you can't apply now. If you applied though in October 2019 and you don't have your correct number, then you need to use the lost confirmation number link that is on the ESE page. The ESE page is the entry status check page where you check to see if you're a winner or not. So you need to go and use that functionality. How many interviews can an embassy handle during a month? So this is an interesting question. There isn't one size fits all. If you go in some embassies, if you go in London embassy, for example, there are probably 40 windows. If you sit in the main room, I don't know if it's still the same. Oh, of course, no, it's changed now. New embassy now since I went. But anyway, it's got a lot of capability, a lot of capacity to do a lot of interviews. And if they're not doing non-immigrant visa interviews, that's a lot of the capacity taken out of the system. So in a sense, they should have more capacity for immigrant visas and that sort of thing. But obviously, the COVID procedures at a particular country will affect how many interviews they're going to have. If you go to a doctor's office, for example, here in the States, where they might have a waiting room that had 20, 30 chairs in it, and you could sit next to each other and they could have 20, 30 people in there. Not that you ever did in an American waiting room, because Americans don't believe in waiting. But nevertheless, they've taken out probably 70% of those chairs. So now only a few people can go into every waiting room, and the same thing will be true in US embassies, right? They'll have procedures in place to slow the spread of the virus and reduce the risk for people at the embassy. So, and then finally, not every embassy is big. Some of the embassies are very small. It depends how many staff they have, and staffing resources at the embassies were reduced over the last year or 2 years, partly because of COVID, but partly because the Trump administration, just took a sledgehammer to every aspect of immigration. Mayorkas, I believe it was, said the other day that they have gutted the immigration system, and it's going to take time for them to put that back together. Part of that gutting was to either let go or not hire new people to do these interviews, right? So it's a difficult thing. So I can't tell you for any particular embassy how many they can process. The busiest embassies though would be normally Cairo embassy. Algiers would be pretty busy. and they will be seeing typically in a typical month a few hundred DV cases a month, right? Whereas if you take Sydney Embassy, for example, tends to only work on DV cases on Tuesdays and specifically Tuesday mornings, right? Every week, and normally it's the first and second and third Tuesdays of each month for Sydney. So it varies by by embassy. Okay. Yes, people did receive 2NLs. Yep. If I won in South America with a low number but wanted to do an interview in Europe, I wrote to them. They changed it. So your number, your place in the line, as it were, will still go by the South America region, not by the European region. But you won't wait for all of the European numbers to go forward. It's just when you're current, you'll be interviewed. That's how it is. Oh, Nikki, congratulations! You just activated your visa. That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and you're in LA as well. La La Land, good fun. Way KCC stop. Don't know what that means. I'm a victim of DV2020. Can you initiate a new lawsuit on behalf of us? You don't. There's all sorts of things wrong with that message. I don't think there were any Nepal cases in 13,000 in DV 2020. I don't think the case numbers went that high for Nepal. I can't initiate a new lawsuit. We've got a lawsuit already. We've got several lawsuits, but they all come under the Gomez case. You just need to wait for that one to finish off. Okay. Yeah, South America. So most of the cases for South America are in 3 countries, right? And those 3 countries, Cuba, Venezuela, both have problems. Peru is the 3rd country that has the majority of the selectees. But in the first 2 cases, Venezuela and Cuba, they've got problems with actually doing the interviews. So that's going to severely impact the whole region. What it probably means is that that's the region, probably the region I think is most likely to go current, and that high case numbers get a chance because, sadly, people in Venezuela and Cuba are going to have a hard time actually getting their interviews and going through that process. So, so the flip side of that is that it makes it easier, or more likely that we'll see that region go current. No real news about that, LV Sonny. No. I gotta go faster on some of these questions. Sponsorship of the lottery, how much income is required? So on my webpage on BritSimonSays.com, there's a FAQ, and in there, in fact, if you just type in the words into Google, BritSimon134, and you'll get to my you'll get to a document that explains exactly how you calculate the income needed. Okay. Okay. How should I know that the case number is the lowest or largest number in the country level? It's not important whether it's lowest or highest in the country, it's where it is in the region. So you just need to know where the case numbers are in the region, and you can you can get information about that. I'll give you a link right now. So the case numbers all start at 1, right? 1 is the lowest case number, and the highest case number is wherever they finish up in the region. You can go onto the link I just sent you, just posted there, and you can get all of the case number ranges, so you can figure out where you belong within the region. Okay. Akaki himself. I've seen you before. After watching a video about the documents I've sent KCC my documents without asking, even though the case number is high, EU 29,000. When should I ask them about the update if the documents are all fine? Wait a little while. I would wait at least 2 weeks, probably more like 3 to 4 weeks before you expect any notice. However, there is going to be some people that it depends where you're from, frankly. some regions, some cases are probably going to receive faster response than that, because processing is just easier in some countries, right? If your documentation is very easily understood, and for the people at KCC, then that's going to be easier for them than if they've got to figure out, okay, what is this document? Oh, it's a birth certificate. So it just will be a little bit quicker in some of the regions because, it's going to be English speaking, for example, or there's less concerns about fraud, or documentation is more obviously official and accurate, right? It's going to be things like that. Going current means, going current for an individual case, that means when your number is below the number published in the visa bulletin. But when we talk about a region going current, it means that now the case numbers are all able to be interviewed because they've calculated that there is more available visas left and enough time to process them than remain in demand, right? Clearly, that isn't the case in DV 2021 at this time, okay? If we have a very low case number in a country with an embassy working, can we book for a medical before we get 2NL? If you've got the email from KCC saying you're ready for scheduling and your case number is current, and you think your embassy is working, then yes, you could try and do that. In some countries, the physician won't let you book the appointment without having the 2NL, the document that says you've got an interview appointment. But you could try if you wanted to. There's no harm in trying. Sarah, no, I don't think Europe can become current. It would take an extraordinary amount of refusals and non-responses for Europe to become current. An extraordinary amount, but this is an extraordinary year. So, I'm not predicting things because it's an unpredictable year, right? Anil says, when to expect 2NL for the case number 2021 from Nepal, 68. I don't, not for a while yet. You're at 68,000. You're not current yet, right? So you'll have to just wait for that. No update on that. People have wondered why the judge has been so slow to make a decision. I've wondered as well. He's normally faster than this in his decisions. We then thought that he'd make a decision once the government had acted, but the case goes on. The government lawyers have tried to sort of say the case is moot, meaning it doesn't need to be heard anymore. But rightfully, our lawyers have said no, it's not moot. We got work to do still. We've got argument to have in that case. We need to continue the hearings. So that will continue. I don't know when that will resolve. I'm just hoping it will be soon. Can we contact the embassy? Yep, Francisco, I think it's a good idea. If you've got an embassy you think is working and they're communicative, you can talk to them. You can either phone them or email them. Yeah, absolutely. Ask them, particularly if you're in a quiet embassy, and you may get the same sort of treatment that Algiers just got. Okay. I was told to find a direct flight from Middle East to America because aircraft transiting through Europe are grounded from entering America due to COVID. No, the person that said that to you is working on old information. Assuming that you are a DV 2020 visa holder, you have a blanket national interest exception, which means that you can transit through Europe. And it is not true to say that the flights are grounded. They don't just stop in Europe and park the plane. That's ridiculous. It's just that some people are not able to enter, right? So the people are being grounded, not the flights. So you can transit through Europe if you're a DV 2020 visa holder. So by all means, you can do that. Otherwise, go direct. I mean, a direct flight might be more expensive, but it might be more comfortable. AS127XX. I don't know. I can't predict when things are going to go. you know, this is all very unpredictable. Nothing is normal this year, right? Nothing is normal. 5 police certificates because you lived elsewhere, so it's going to take time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you need to get going on the documents, Akaki. Venezuelan people that need to go to Bogota to the U.S. Embassy. Any information? No, I don't really know. I don't really know exactly how that process is going to work, and I'm a little concerned about Bogota Embassy, I have to say. But you're just going to have to push, do what you can for your own case and report back if you're getting specific pushback from Bogota or anywhere else. Haven't asked yet my documents cases you submit. Your case number is AF 46,000. Yeah, so you could submit your documents anyway without being asked, right? And it's getting to the point for your case number that I would say, yes, go ahead and do that. So, go ahead and get your police certificates ready. Make sure you know how to format your documents and send them to KCC, okay? Same thing for AS 29,000, although your case number is much higher. There's no, okay, so if you have a high case number that never gets current, that you don't get a chance, and that is a possibility at AS 29,000, right? Submission of the DS260 is detrimental to your future prospects of non-immigrant visas, right? It can be a hindrance. It can be it's not that you can't get a non-immigrant visa in the future. It just makes it a little bit harder, right? But once you've submitted the DS260, you have declared immigrant intent. Sending the documents after that is no more damage, right? You're not making the case worse by sending the documents. So if you'd already sent the DS260, you may as well send the documents. There's no harm in doing that. Okay. You've not received an email. Depending on your case number, you can go ahead and send them. If your case number is Africa 85,000, then don't feel you need to rush about it. Shall we say it that way? If you got there is on the FAQ on my webpage. There's discussion about the 4 diseases. There are only 4 diseases that will keep you from getting your visa. Go over to BritSimonSays.com and read the FAQ, and you'll see that. Yeah, I think I don't know about pressure, but you do a lot more with honey than you do with a stick, right? So you don't put pressure on them as such. Certainly you can't force them. I mean, all this Twitter stuff, hashtags and everything, that hasn't caused any positive movement. That if that's the sort of thing you mean by pressure, that's just, it doesn't really help. But if you can win the embassy over, if you can become their friend, if you can ask for them to empathize with your position, and therefore take action on your behalf, that's much more powerful, in my opinion. Much more effective, more powerful. Okay. Okay, so now I've lost my place. Oh, okay. You received KCC email a few days ago. Problem with the police certificate, it should take months until you get it. Should I wait or should you? Why would it take months, Arif? I get frustrated with questions like this, because if you knew it was going to take months to get your police certificate, then you should have started earlier, right? But they're very clear in their instructions that until you have all of the documentation required, you shouldn't be sending your documents at all. So I don't know. See if you can get your document faster. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait until you get the police certificate. If, on the other hand, you're one of the countries where they have a slightly unusual procedure for police certificates, where they send it directly to the embassy, then you can show proof that you applied for it, and maybe that would be enough, right? So you could try that, Aref, but it's frustrating that you didn't do that earlier, knowing that it was going to take months. Can I be sponsored by someone who has stayed and worked in the US for only 4 months? No. They need to be a permanent resident or a citizen for a start, and they really need to show last year's income. So in 2021, they need to be showing their tax form for the whole of 2020. So no, don't use someone who's only been there 4 months. DV lottery available, tattoo or not? Tattoo or not? Are you saying, okay, are you, I don't know what you're saying here. I think you might be asking, and I've been asked this question before, does it matter if I've got a tattoo? No, of course it doesn't matter if you've got a tattoo. As long as your tattoo doesn't say something like F America, I want to kill Americans, all over your face or something, that would be a problem, obviously. But if your tattoo is something, just a random tattoo on your arm or something like that, or, other tattoos, no big problem with that. So, just use some common sense. The medical is performed to see if you've got a disease that would affect other people. The medical is not to have a look at your body to see if you've got tattoos, or to see if you wear eyeglasses, or to see if you've got long hair or short hair. Nobody gives a damn about any of that stuff, right? It's to see, well, there's two things. Number one, are you going to bring disease to America? That's one thing. Number two, do you have some medical condition that is going to impact your ability to earn a living in America, right? So that Americans or people living here will end up supporting you through our tax money. That's all they care about. Whether you've got a big toe or a short finger or a big ass, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. And I certainly don't think anyone cares if you've got tattoos, again, unless there is something really obviously fundamentally wrong with the tattoo you've got that makes someone think you're going to be a terrorist or something towards towards Americans. Okay, other than that, no. Is it normal you don't receive your case AS 18,000? Yeah, it's pretty normal, but you can go ahead and submit your documents if you want. Case number 81,000. Any chance? I'm from Nepal. Always put your region. I know obviously you're Asia because you said you're from Nepal, but always put your region there. Now, for Nepal, it's going to depend on the embassy. The embassy, I don't know what the COVID situation is in Nepal, but the embassy seemed to be a little bit slow in Kathmandu. So I don't know why that is, but in theory, it's a big enough embassy that it could process all the cases in time if the case numbers are moved fast. And I say that assuming that they won't be doing the volume of non-immigrant visas in the embassy. So we'll have to wait and see whether they can do that. So really, Manish, I can't be precise. I can't say exactly. Obviously, you'll have to wait and see. But you have to just keep hopeful. I don't. Well, will the 2018 scenario be repeated where there's a cutoff? Is that what you mean? I don't know. Again, how can we predict these things? We don't. There are positive and negative factors in all of what we see. Things like, okay, so to give you some numbers, in a normal year, pre-COVID and pre-Trump, there was something like 9 million visas issued for non-immigrant visas throughout the world every year, right? And less than 1 million immigrant visas. And at the moment, the embassies are saying, we don't want to do that non-immigrant visa work. We're going to focus on the immigrant visa work. If they're doing anything at all, they're focusing on immigrant visa work and US citizen work, etc. So there's a massive volume of work that is not being performed by the embassies, and they have no plans to perform that work, except in emergency cases. So there's a massive reduction. That's a positive thing in terms of capacity. But the negative things is just about everything else. COVID, procedures that will slow them down, etc. Just about everything else. So we don't know what will happen because of those things, right? It's just impossible to predict. I mean, this has never happened before, and even if it had happened before, things are always going to be different, year to year. I never got the first letter. Is the 2NL going to come? Your first letter, the 1NL, as I call it, is the letter saying you've been selected. So, of course, you got that one. I think what you mean about the first letter is probably the one that says send your documents. That's the documents letter. We don't give that a 1NL or a 2NL name. It's just the documents email. And you aren't going to get your 2NL unless you've sent your documents. So whether they email you and you send your documents, or whether you just send your documents without being emailed, one way or the other, you need to send your documents, right? And you're not going to get an interview unless you've done that, unless those documents have been processed. So there you go. You asked earlier, Paola. Yeah, I think you asked earlier as well, Charbel. Okay. Jay Tommy says, thank you, mate. What about if I study in Eastern Europe? Do I need to get the criminal record from there too? I study there. Yeah. Well, if you studied there, you didn't get on a plane every morning to go study there. You lived there while you were studying, right, Jay Tommy? Now, if that period was for an extended period of time, it's likely that you'll need a police certificate, right? It's all about reading the instructions. Read the instructions, and you'll see whether you need a police certificate or not. But generally speaking, yes, people need police certificates from at least their own country, and very often they need it from other countries as well. Multiple police certificates. You might be in a position where you have to supply 4 or 5 police certificates, right? It's possible. You asked earlier. I'll be current in the coming VB. I've sent DS260 and all my docs as requested. You should ask them. Ask them. Send them an email. Ask them. It's not a bad thing to ask them. A Kenyan in Bahrain. They're denying to give me PCC because my visa is online, and they haven't put a sticker on my passport. Am I late to send the documents? So AF, I've deduced, not that you told me, but I deduced you're an AF 15,000. You're not late to send the documents, but you need to get on that. You need to figure that out. I know Bahrain are difficult to send police certificates, but what's the most important thing is that you followed the instructions on the reciprocity page for Bahrain, right? So Google reciprocity page, look up Bahrain and see what the procedure is. If you've followed the procedure and you've documented that you followed the procedure, but you get a formal letter back from Bahrain saying we're not going to give you a police certificate for whatever reason, then that is the evidence that you present to KCC saying you at least tried to get the police certificate. Okay, can't just say that, you have to document it. Hi Britt, my case number is AF 39,000. Can I submit documents? Yes, go ahead and submit. What do you think will happen with DVs 2017 to 2019? Okay, Aria, you're asking about the Muslim ban cases, I think. It's a difficult subject, right? Everybody knows that the Muslim ban was racist, xenophobic bullshit, right? Horrible, horrible thing to have done. And from DV 2017 to 2020, cases were refused on the basis of that. DV 2020 Muslim ban cases have a chance because although the fiscal year ended, the Gomez case is keeping hopes alive that we can get some more visas issued, and therefore it would be easier to reopen those earlier denied cases that were denied for the Muslim ban. DV 2017, 2018, 2019 are harder because their fiscal years ended and no court protected their rights, preserved the visas, that sort of thing, as Meta did in 2020, right? So it's much harder. We'll have to wait for the government to figure out how they want to operate on this reopening of old cases. I think when they wrote that in the proclamation that tore down the Muslim ban, they were thinking about family relationships, where the relationship still exists. In other words, the conditions to get a visa are still in place today. You're still the son or the daughter of the the person sponsoring you. You're still the sibling of the person sponsoring you, right? And there's no real time limit. With DV lottery, there is a time limit. And so the conditions for you to get a visa are different to family-based. So it's going to be harder. I can't predict how that's going to come out. I've had conversations with the lawyers behind the scenes about that, but there's no real firm direction on it. I answered that earlier. I can't tell you when you expect the interview, Nana. How many visas will issue for the winners? Well, I don't know. Well, there's up to 55,000 visas available. Whether we'll see whether there are, whether we can use up all of those 55,000 visas or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. My case is MVC up to now. What next? You didn't finish a sentence there. But your case being at MVC on the CX system, that's normal. That just means your case hasn't been moved to the embassy yet. The first thing you see is the in transit and then ready. Okay, that's what happens. Your AF 58,000, do you have a hope for further processing? You can send the documents, but your case has got a long way to go before you're current, of course, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. Okay. What is the maximum that documents can be old for interview? Okay, so the police certificate in particular is a document that expires, and they'll accept that document up to 12 months. And generally, 12 months is the timeline for documents. However, for a birth certificate, my birth certificate is 50 years old, and I, no need to replace it, right? Because I'm over 50 years old. So, some documents are naturally going to be older. Marriage documents are going to be older. So unless you live in a country where documents have to be renewed, then they're as old as they are. But the police certificate and the medical, it has to be recent, and the police certificate needs to be less than 12 months old. That's basically the normal requirements. Okay. What if you win 2022? Then it should easily enter the United States. So, Barendra, everybody that it was in 2020 and 2021, when they read your comment, should you easily enter the United States? They probably laughed, because this has not been easy for people in DV 2020 and 2021. And there's a whole pandemic going on out there. So, number one, your chance of selection in the lottery is about 1 in 100 years. Right? It's very rare that people get selected. So, the fact that you're thinking everybody enters the lottery. I buy a lottery ticket thinking I'm going to win the money, but not everybody wins the money, right? It's a lottery. Same thing with this DV lottery. So you may not get selected, but if you do get selected, it will take time. It's not an easy process. It will take time. You've got to think it will take at least a year, before you're going to be entering the USA, and goodness knows what can happen in that time. And again, people in 2020 and 2021 can tell you all the things that can happen. Hossam, I think we talked about that. Can I change a country of interview? It should have been in the Schengen area. Lolita. You can. I wouldn't be changing locations right now. But there are certain certain times when that makes sense. Let's say, for example, you are from Moscow and you happen to be living in London, right? Or in Paris. So the Moscow embassy is not covered by the Schengen ban. And if you lived in Moscow, but you're working in Paris or London, as I said in my example, it might be advantageous to you to say you want to be interviewed back in your home country. And as long as you've still got an address there, like a family address and that sort of thing, then you can contact KCC and give them that address, and they will set you up with an interview in Moscow, for example, or whatever other country. So in some cases, you can do that, and you can do that prior to the scheduling of the interview. The other thing you can do is the interview will be scheduled at some country. That country then says, well, we can't interview you for whatever reason. And you can ask to transfer that to another embassy. But since a lot of people are going to be asking for those sort of transfers, my thinking is that's going to be, some of the embassies are going to start to say, no, we can't accept transfers. We can't accept, cases from other countries. So it'll vary case by case. It's difficult to tell you exactly what the situation will be in your particular case, Lolita. Okay, a few more questions, then we'll call it a day. I'm over an hour here, so. Akani, DV winner who's a bit settled in the States now. That's awesome. Thanks, Simon. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. Sardor, we are DV2021 with case number 21, EU 400 range. That's nice. Okay, so I don't think all 2NLs are being sent out in the next day or so, right? I think we're going to see specific embassies, people being scheduled at some embassies, and that will probably continue for a few more days. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the normal March 2NLs, whether they go out more generically to more embassies. It's very difficult to know exactly what's going to happen. I think the main point of this live session, the main thing I want to get over to people, is that it is clear that KCC are doing something special. They're cooperating, they're working with the embassies. The embassies, some of them are doing something special, and that's a very positive thing. It's too early to say, oh, great, everything's going to be fine for every embassy. We're all going to be getting 2NLs. It's too early to say that, right? But at least we can see there are signs, very positive signs, that they're doing whatever they can to make this situation better where they can. And I commend them for that. Well done to KCC, well done to Algerian embassy. It's lovely to see that happening. Okay, so that's probably a good point to finish the video. I'm very pleased with how things have turned out today. It's been a good day. I'm very pleased to have seen it. So, and it's come up. The last 2 or 3 weeks has been good, very positive. I'm loving seeing the photos of people arriving in the USA on Twitter. Honestly, it fills my heart full of joy to see that, because these are people that deserve their chance, and a lot of hard work went into getting those people that chance, and it paid off big time. So I just think that if you're one of those people that's entering now, good luck to you, best of luck to you. I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful life in the USA. And we're not going to stop fighting for DV 2020. Obviously, we're going to continue to fight for DV 2021. And when DV 2022 comes around, we'll fight for them too. That's just the way it's been. And it's, I personally have been doing this since 2014. So, I'm not going to stop. I'm hoping it continues. All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Good news day. Have a good day. Bye-bye.